Welcome, everybody, and thank you all for joining us tonight for the Board of Environmental Safety's Permit Appeal Workshop. My name is Sheena Brooks, and I will be assisting and facilitating tonight's workshop. Before we start, of course, there are some items that I need to go over. This workshop is being recorded, and by your continued participation, it is acknowledgement that you are being recorded. Additionally, tonight's workshop is available in English and Spanish. If you would like to participate in Spanish, please select the interpretation icon located in the Zoom toolbar and select Spanish. If you are joining by phone, please wait for the interpreters to provide instructions for commenting. If anyone experiences connectivity issues with Zoom, you can also call in for either English or Spanish. The phone numbers are provided to you now on the slide. It is also posted on our website and will now be provided in the chat as well. Maybe take a photo or a screenshot of this slide just in case you run into issues during the workshop. And we currently have interpreters currently interpreting these instructions in Spanish. I'd like to thank both Jeanette and Lydia for joining us tonight as they interpret for our Spanish speakers. And just a few more logistical items before we start. Tonight's presentation is posted on our website at bes.dtsc.ca.gov. And for tonight's workshop, we have actually elected to enable the Zoom chat function. And we'd like to remind everyone that the main purpose for tonight is public engagement directly related to the 4 questions that we will be discussing. Staff will be monitoring the chats, and we will read out those comments that are directly related to the topic on hand as time allows. Please keep side chat to a minimum. If you are experiencing technical issues during the event, please send a chat message to Corin, the Zoom host. And I would also like to remind everyone at this time that we are recording tonight's session. And on a recorded Zoom, all chat becomes part of the recorded record. So just please be mindful of that. Closed captions are enabled on Zoom, and you can move the caption display or turn them off altogether. Please stay muted throughout the workshop unless you are making a comment. Once you are called on to speak, you may unmute yourself at that time. Additionally, we ask that everyone, except for the 3 panel members tonight, turn off your video cameras. When you are commenting, please turn your camera on. To ensure proper translation, I will periodically check in with the Spanish line to see if there are any comments. So during that time, there will be a pause for translation. I will also be repeating several of these housekeeping items tonight to ensure that everyone is receiving the same information. There will be many opportunities throughout tonight's workshop for public comment. Please raise your virtual hand on your Zoom toolbar during the comment period that you would like to participate in. And if you would like to express your comment in writing, you can email it to us at besinfo@bes.dtsc.ca.gov. And we ask that when it is your opportunity to comment, you speak at an even pace to ensure that all participants are able to hear you and that translation can be translated accurately. And we want to ensure that everyone has an equitable opportunity to speak, as we want to hear from everyone that wishes to participate tonight. And to ensure balance for everyone, during public comment, you will be given 3 minutes, and we will let you know when there are 30 seconds remaining and then when the time expires. Time allotted will be doubled for participants expressing their comment in Spanish. And if you are commenting in Spanish, please let us know that at the start of your comment. And this concludes tonight's logistics review. Thank you for your time, and I will now pass it over to Member Ruiz.
Thank you, Sheena. First of all, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. My name is Hazardous Ruiz. I am a member of the Board of Environmental Safety, and I'm participating from Southgate, which is located in Southeast LA. I would like to introduce my board colleague, Alexis Strauss-Hacker, our Executive Officer, Swati Sharma. You have all just met Sheena Brooks, our Administrative Liaison, our Ombudsperson, Jessica Swan, and of course, our board lawyer, Greg Forrest. We also have CSUS staff, CIP interpretation, and DTSC staff supporting us today. So for today's theme, we are going to be talking about public engagement. And we will go into that in a few minutes, but just to briefly recap our recent public comment opportunity. Our last workshop in August, our first opportunity occurred in August during our August board meeting, when we asked the public to first comment. And in September, we focused at our workshop on the following questions. What should be the timing of an appeal? Who may file an appeal? What issues should be raised during an appeal? And what legal standards should govern the board decision? We are still welcoming comments on any of these questions, and the way to comment will be briefly explained by Member Strauss. We would like to thank everybody again for participating tonight. We were hoping to have this be an in-person meeting. However, it just proved to be logistically impossible for us to find a location that could hold us later in the day, which we had been hearing comments asking us to hold later meetings for those folks who need to work during the day. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find a location to accommodate us this late. We'll, however, have in-person opportunities to meet and discuss the permit appeals process in November. If anybody has any concerns regarding this, you can please feel free to put your comments in the chat or email us directly, and definitely give us we're welcome to any comments or concerns, and we're hoping to work with the public to make our meetings more accessible, and would appreciate any ideas from the public. So now I'll hand this off to Member Strauss.
Thank you, Lizette. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alexis Strauss-Hacker, and I join Liz and Greg Forrest and our BES team in working to develop the permit appeals process and regulations that are part of our mandate under SB 158. This evening, we're going to try to shape input around public engagement, but of course, anyone can submit comments on any aspect of this particular purpose that we have this evening. Your input is vital to us. As Liz Ruiz had noted, we've received very valuable input to date. We have this evening's workshop. We have a couple of more opportunities, and then we will turn ourselves to discussing this publicly with the board and setting our course for putting together the process that we've been mandated to create. Any comments that you may make this evening and questions that you may have of us that are not fully addressed in the meeting will certainly become part of our administrative record and be responded to. As Sheena Brooks had noted, please use the raise hand function to share your input in person. One of the things that we've designed in this evening's agenda purposefully is to provide an opportunity for those who have not yet participated to speak first and to give us their thoughts. We've set aside time on this evening's agenda for that. Comments can relate certainly to any aspect of our permit appeal task, and commenters are asked to take up to 3 minutes to give us their thoughts. Sheena Brooks will be calling on participants shortly, and then we can turn to the individuals that have commented in the past. We will acknowledge that they're seen and they will have the opportunity to be called on. So as you can understand, we're specifically designing into this evening's agenda the opportunity to hear from those we have not yet heard from. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our team, Greg Forrest and Liz. We have some slides for you, and then we will get to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Strauss-Hacker. So as the board member mentioned, we are allowing opportunities at this time for anybody who has not had an opportunity to participate in one of our workshops. Please take this opportunity. If you have anything that you wanted to convey to our committee, please do that now. If not, we can proceed with the rest of our presentation.
I do have a hand. Aiden Kasabani, you may go ahead and turn on your camera and unmute yourself.
Sounds good. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Good evening, board members. My name is Aideen Pasabani, and I serve as a legislative deputy within the office of Hilda El Solis, LA County Board of Supervisor representing the First District. I'm here today to submit some comments on behalf of the First District. The supervisor will be submitting a formal letter later on to this board. Here are our comments. On timing to appeal, it's clear that in many cases, 30 days does not suffice for individuals, government, and/or community activists to mobilize, galvanize support, and mount an appeal. Increasing the time from 30 days to 60 days or more, at least for non-parties to the underlying appeal, would give more time for that to occur. Even if the board is unwilling to grant a blanket extension of an additional 30 to 60 days, there should at least be a procedure in cases where a facility is of significant public interest, where the deadline can routinely be extended upon request. We strongly favor the increase in public participation that a longer appeal deadline will allow. On standing or who may appeal, there should be an opportunity for those other than those who are directly interested in a permit to appeal. For instance, the option could be afforded to those living and working within several miles of the facility, community activists who represent those people, as well as state and local governments in whose jurisdiction the facility of area of impact is located. This will empower the community to claim more of a stake in the permitting process. On basis of appeal, while an error of law or the fact is an important basis, DTSC must recognize policy considerations, both at the permit level and on, such as environmental justice. In such cases, the board should take into consideration the cumulative impacts of the permitted operations on the local community, even if all permit requirements have otherwise been met. As to the requirement on appeal must be raised in the first permitting process, such a rule would be limited to non-parties unless all are given robust notice throughout the permitting process. On standard of review, the board will need to strike a balance, recognizing some level of deterrence to DTSD staff who have the time, expertise, and resources to undertake a more detailed review than is possible on appeal, while remaining open to challenges, including challenges based on policy considerations larger than the issues in a single appeal. Finally, while not one of the express considerations under review by the board at this time, the issue of who receives notice of permit application or appeal thereof is critically important. Without robust notice to the interested parties and stakeholders, all of the other procedural safeguards will be unavailing. For instance, in the case of a Class 2 permit modification or alteration, the public is only notified once staff makes its decision on the application. Local and state government, as well as public interest groups, should broadly be given notice on all permit applications and appeals. DTSC has the website and listserv ability to do this efficiently and without undue cost before final adoption.
Aiden, I hate to interrupt you, but if you could hold on your comments for the questions for our presentation, we would hate to open the comment period for the questions or the topics that we're actually discussing today. But we definitely do appreciate any comments regarding the previous questions presented to the public. So if you have any additional comments regarding anything else besides the questions that we will be discussing today, we're definitely open to hear from you.
That should wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aiden.
Thank you, Liz. I just wanted to remind everyone that this portion is for opportunity for participants who have not previously had a chance to comment on the permit appeal process on any aspect of it. And at this time, I do not see additional hands up. And we're going to pause for a second while we work with the Spanish interpretation line. So I appreciate everyone's patience while we figure this out. At this time, it looks like we're good to continue. At this time, if there are any other participants on Zoom that would like to comment for this portion of the workshop, for those individuals that we have not yet heard from, we would like to hear what you have to say. I don't see any hands. And so I would like to ask the Spanish line if there are any Spanish commenters that would like to comment at this time. Okay, so I don't see any. It doesn't look like there was any comments from the Spanish line. And again, I want to remind everyone that this portion is for individuals that have not previously commented on any aspects of the permit appeal process. So it could be in regards to an item or subject that we've already covered in the past. But if you have not yet participated or commented, we would like to hear from you. Okay, panel members, I think we're good to move on. There is no hands raised and no commenters on the Spanish line either.
Very good. So what we're hoping to cover in this workshop are the 4 topics that you see in front of you now. We're going to be covering how people in the community, members of the public, receive notice of a permit decision, who receives notice, how they can participate in the appeal process and who specifically participates in the appeal process. We're going to be speaking about the administrative record and what goes into the administrative record, as well as alternative dispute resolution as part of the appeal process. We have questions for all of you, and we're hoping to hear your input as we discuss each of these questions. So we'll start with the first topic. Under the current regulation, DTSC provides notice of a final permit decision to the applicant that is seeking the approval of the permit, as well as each person who submitted comments on the draft permit that was reviewed before the final permit decision, and then any person who requests notice of the final permit, of course, also receives notice of a permit decision. So under the current regulations, those are the only individuals who receive notice of a final permit decision. And I'll hand it over to Liz at this point.
Thank you, Greg. So our first question is, who should receive a notice of an appeal? Does anybody in the public want to weigh in on that? Should we expand the folks who are, who Greg just mentioned? Should it stay as is? We would appreciate any feedback on this. Anybody in the public? We'll give it a few more minutes.
Looks like somebody's raised their hand.
Let me check with the Zoom line as well. If there's anyone in the Spanish line that would like to comment, please queue up and then you can comment after Ms. Florence. Ms. Florence, you can go ahead.
Thank you. My comment, one of the things that I did was look at DTSC's webpage, and particularly the permit denial portion, but I don't understand why a notice could not be posted on DTSC's webpage when a permit is completed and a copy of that permit so that people could review it. I don't know what it means when you say notice a group of people. Does that mean they receive a letter, or how would they get that notice? And there may be some need of accommodating people who don't routinely use the computer. But I would think the information on DTSC's webpage could be complete information that basically is shared with everybody. For example, I got recently a notice that the fiber tech permit was available in draft. And the way I found that out was it was posted on the webpage, right on the kind of more newsworthy items. So I just would suggest that in addition to the people that you may be communicating with, either by the mail or perhaps to their specific email address, that you also consider posting the information on DTSC's webpage in the hope that people might get this information that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. You actually went ahead and answered the rest of the second portion of the questions. How should the board inform the public during the process and compile a list of the interested persons? So if anybody wants to give their feedback on, who will receive the notice of appeal and how should the public be informed, this is your opportunity. I know, Aiden, you were kind of jumping into the topic. So if you feel the need to express or finish your comment regarding this question, we would definitely appreciate it and welcome it.
At this time, I don't see any additional hands raised. Are there any comments on the Spanish line? I don't see any hands raised. Panel, you guys can continue.
Very good. So, yeah, we were interested also in knowing how the board should inform the public during the process and whether we should compile a list of interested persons specifically in the appeal, as Liz mentioned. So we'll move on then to question 2, assuming there's no other comments on this question. So this, the next question involves the parties to the appeal. And under the current regulations, to participate in an appeal, which means to have rights to raise issues and to seek resolution of a dispute related to a particular facility, a person has to actually file an appeal, which makes them a petitioner. Very often, the facility owner or operator will file an appeal of their own permit because they have issues that they want to contest with the permit. Other times, members of the community will dispute the issuance of a permit to a given facility, and so there'll be a community group very often as a petitioner. But at this point, other than DTSC's own permitting staff, the parties to an appeal and who can participate in an appeal is really limited to those individuals. So, Liz, I think we had a question to pose to the group on this one as well.
Yes, so who can participate in the appeal process? You know, just listening to what Greg just said, who should it be limited to the folks he just mentioned? Should it be expanded? How far wide reach of the public should be included. I guess we can post the second question as well. Should the board allow participation beyond only the parties to the appeal? For example, the petitioner, DTSC, and the facility owner or operator. So if anybody has any comments or anything that they hope to have clarified by Greg, this would be your opportunity.
At this time, I don't see any hands raised on the Zoom. Are there any comments on the Spanish line? Okay, no, there are no comments on the Spanish line and no hands raised.
All right, then we can move on to question 3 if there's no participants that have questions or people have questions in the audience. Okay, so next topic then is the administrative record. As many of you know who've participated in these permit decisions, the administrative record can be very, very lengthy. I won't go through every single element of this. You can see there's a lot to it. Of course, there's the permit application itself, but basically all of the paper that gets generated during the review of a permit application, which can consume years, all of that gets put into the administrative record. Usually there are CEQA documents that get included in the administrative record. There's a statement of basis of fact sheet. And moreover, any of the materials that are generated during the public review of a draft permit go into the administrative record, all the correspondence, the comments that are received, DTSC's responses to comments, and the materials that are submitted at hearings. And then, of course, an index that includes all of that. So that's important because what goes in the administrative record then becomes the record that the board considers during the appeal process itself. And so I think it was Alexis that had questions that she would pose for this one.
Thank you, Greg. I'm determined that we're going to hear from more of you in the audience this evening. As you know, as DTSC is preparing a final permit and making a permit decision, the administrative record is quite extensive, as Greg has just shown in the previous 2 slides. And we are interested in hearing from you. Are there other things that you see that we recommend to DTSC be included? There are things certainly that the board of its own could create in our own administrative processes and regulations that we would want to consider as we prepare to hear an appeal. What do you think those should be? And although much of what was written predates the ease of seeing the stuff on email, how should we make it available? When should it be made available? My understanding is that DTSC's goal is to have the full administrative record complete at the time of the permit decision being issued. And if that's the case, how should we then manage the timing when a permit is appealed or a permit decision is appealed? How should the board manage the timing of giving communities or others access to that record that the board's going to consider? So I know I'm being a little long-winded there, but I would really value your thinking on this to help us shape how we approach the regulations we're going to draft and the administrative process we're going to follow.
We are now open for public comment on this question. If anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. And anyone in the Spanish line, if anyone has any comments, please alert me to that. We do have one hand raised on Zoom. Ms. Florence, you can go ahead.
I have actually done some thinking about this because I know how tough it is knowing what a permit application can look like, which is a binder with numerous, several binders. Would be very difficult for someone to receive immediately, I think. But it occurs to me that this administrative record that is to be completed could be available in the regional office where the permit is being considered as a public record. So people could go in and look at it and read it and get copies of the materials that they wanted copies of. I would say it could be put in a local library also. Well, I have some reservation about that because there are agencies that allege that documents were in the public library and then they weren't there. And I would say that's just about the worst thing you can do. In terms of having the violations, I think the legal issues with when it's appropriate to publish violations should be clearly understood, but certainly that would be something that members of the public would be very anxious to know. So perhaps that would be one of the documents that could be routinely provided as part of the material that goes out to the public. I do want to mention one more thing, and that is I have worked with the South Coast Air Quality Management District now for quite a long time. And some of the things they have that are very useful. First of all, they have a notice of a meeting or an activity in their mailing list. So I received notices of meetings, I received notice of a forming of a work group, etc. And I think the mailing list that DTSC maintains is really a critical topic. The other thing that happens at the South Coast is that when they're working on a rule, acknowledging a permit is quite different from a rule, but they put together a work group that participates in the process. And I have participated in several of the work groups. They are always open to the public. And that is another way of involving the public in offering that kind of an opportunity when a new permit is being considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Florence. I see Andrea Ventura. Please state your name and affiliation, please.
Hi, my name is Andrea Ventura. I'm with Clean Water Action. And I'll be brief. I have not worked in a permitting process, but I have worked in a public process dealing with a local pollution issue where the community was very much engaged and had regular meetings. And I think that one of the things I do like the idea of putting things in a local library, even putting things in the local media when it's a very community-oriented issue to provide people with the ability to participate. That said, you can, there's obviously a need to be comprehensive with the administrative record. Nobody would question that. It needs to be there historically, somebody can go back and look at some of these things. But you can also overwhelm the public and really shoot down public participation if you overwhelm them with data. I mean, you're putting in SQL reports, you're putting in all these other, answers to different comments, and it can get a bit overwhelming of where do you even start when you open up those binders that the previous speaker mentioned. And so I think there has to be some sort of guidance of how to read these documents and what to maybe start with or look for, maybe some sort of general synopsis that's meaningful, but indicates that there's more detail embedded in the rest of the folder, but something that helps somebody at least get the sense of what's going on in those folders before they even start parsing through it. I think that will provide the opportunity for the public, and not just experts to weigh in.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your suggestions. As with Florence's, one of the things that occurs to me is that as we go through this process of soliciting public comment and recommendations from a broad swath of people, some of them facilities, some community leaders and the like, that there may be things that we could collect at the end of the process and work with our DTSC colleagues that are part of really the DTSC permitting process, more so than the Board of Environmental Safety appeal process. And so over the previous workshops and board meetings, we have heard a number of suggestions that I think would fit well under that category of things we can talk about with DTSC that they may be thinking about as well. So thank you very much, both of you, for your comments. And back to you, Sheena.
And as a reminder for anyone who would like to submit their comments in writing, you can always email it to us at besinfo@bes.dtsc.ca.gov. And if there are any other comments for this question, please raise your virtual hand. And are there any comments on the Spanish line? Okay, I'm seeing no additional hands raised.
Okay. I think we'll move on to question 4 then. Oh, we discussed when it would become available too. So let's see. Okay, so the last topic we wanted to cover in the workshop is the role that we may have for alternative dispute resolution. Right now, under the current regulations and the way the DTSC has handled permit appeals historically, there has not been a specific effort or I guess I should say place within the process for what we would call settlement negotiations or settlement conference, or some kind of mediation during the process. Of course, in judicial context and in court cases, settlement conferences are a thing that occurs pretty routinely. And virtually all courts have some form of mediation or alternative dispute resolution to go along with the typical court process. I think quite often these occur in administrative settings as well. Obviously, DTSC does encourage the parties to resolve their differences, but I think we're interested in knowing some input on this. So Alexis, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Greg. Our question for you is, how do you see the role of an early opportunity for the parties to meet before the board would go into the full-on public hearing to hear a hazardous waste permit appeal? Do you think there's a place in there? I had posed this question because it seems that in the timing, from the time a permit appeal is made until such time as the board would accept it and provide notice and review the materials, some time will pass, which gives the parties the opportunity to have, perhaps at the board's strong encouragement, the opportunity to meet and confer and reduce the number of issues that may be on the table, to have a civil conversation with one another as opposed to just an exchange of documents. Are there things that you've worked with that are tools we could consider for alternative dispute resolution? So we'd like to hear your comments on this. Do you think the board should strongly encourage this? And should it be positioned between the time an appeal is made and the time the board issues a notice to hear a matter? Sheena will call on anyone who raises their hand.
At this time, I don't see any hands raised. Are there any comments in the Spanish line? Ms. Florence, you can go ahead.
My concern about this is that the company appeals their own permit, and then they get together with the people that worked on the permit and don't have an open process for resolution of that. I don't know if it makes sense to have like a mediator who would be present for that process. But I would assume if a citizen group filed an appeal, almost predictably, the company that was getting the permit would want to be present in any kind of mitigation that went on, any kind of effort to resolve the issues. But when it's the company filing the appeal, I'm concerned that that would be a closed process without a neutral third party, which I think one of the reasons that the Board of Environmental Safety has been asked to tackle this is so that there is a neutral third party in the process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sheena, do you see other hands raised?
At this time, I do not. If there are any other individuals that would like to comment on this question, I believe it's the last question. Is that correct, guys?
It is the last question, but what we've built into this evening's agenda is, at this point, if there are no other comments on this fourth question, we're opening it up to the entire group of participants for your comments, not constrained just by this. We had wanted to structure it around public engagement this evening, and as you know, you're also welcome to comment on any facet of our endeavor here.
At this time, I do not see any additional hands raised.
Yes, and we're definitely open to any other thing we might miss, anything we should be, considering during this appeal process. Because we are limited on time, we ourselves have sort of planned these workshops out with specific questions we feel are definitely, things that we really hope to gauge and maybe not reach consensus, but at least hear what the public thinks, so that when we do start drafting these regulations, it doesn't come as a surprise to the public, because this process is very important, and it's definitely something that we need to start setting in place sooner than later. So we really do appreciate any input, and the way this is going to work is we will be, we are taking meticulous notes, and we will be reporting to the rest of the board what what you all are commenting on, so that, you know, the rest of the board do really consider the comments received during this workshop. So whatever you all have to say, it's definitely, you know, something we really do value and hope to consider during this difficult task.
I don't think there was too much left in this slideshow. I'll go ahead and advance the slides here just so we don't miss anything. But yeah, I think we're pretty much open at this point to comments on about anything. So I think you all know how to use the raise hand feature, but you know, we can show you, you can also submit your comments via email. So.
Okay. Sheena, if you don't see any hands raised, then Liz and I will move to the next portion of the agenda.
Do not see any additional hands raised.
Okay. What we'd like to do is just give a quick recap and discuss the next opportunity for public input, and then our envisioned schedule of working on the hazardous waste permit appeal process. Liz, do you want to start with a couple comments and then I'll summarize November?
Yes. So for the permit, for the first question, the open questions, we did hear from Ina Solis's office, Aiden Pasabin, mentioning that at least for the previous workshop, that it's really important to have more timing for the appeal, definitely more than 30 days, as that is not enough. So perhaps increase it to at least 60 days. And for the policy considerations, to consider cumulative impacts around the facility in question, and if permit impacts have been provided, even if there aren't any permit impacts directly affecting, you know, just to really consider the cumulative impact around the facility. And for question 1, who will receive a notice of an appeal? We did hear from Florence Garivian to definitely have the information posted on the webpage when, as soon as possible, when it's completed and available, and to definitely figure out how to accommodate people who don't use a computer, and have that information posted on the website. For who can participate in the appeal process, should the board allow participation beyond only the parties to the appeal? We didn't receive any comments for question number 3. What should be included within the appeal record? When should it become available? Again, Florence mentioned expanding where the information is available, having a repository at the regional office, and even, you know, perhaps making it available at the local libraries, and making sure that information is really available at the local libraries, and really having a mailing list, and distributing this information during the mailing list. She also mentioned that HMD has a work group that participates during the process of their permitting process, I believe. And so that's definitely something she suggests, to having our process be open to more public participation. And Andrea Ventura with the Clean Water Action mentioned for the public process to put, you know, she agreed with having the information available at the library, and having it be comprehensive is always a good thing. Historically, it can be overwhelming. So she suggested having some sort of guidance at the beginning of the record, administrative record, to perhaps make it be like a synopsis to guide the public on what they should expect, and perhaps even explain some of the more difficult things For question 4, what should be the role of an early settlement conference or other alternative dispute resolution process? So Florence again commented on the concern that a company can appeal their own permit and get together with the people who issued the permit and not have an open process on, what they settle on. And so she mentioned the need for definitely having a mediator, and spoke about how one-sided the process might be, because if a citizen group files an appeal, the company would want to be present. However, if the company files an appeal, citizens won't have the opportunity to be present. So there won't be neutral third parties. So the purpose of the Board of Environmental Safety is to serve as that third party. And I believe that's all. Do you have anything to add, Alexis?
Liz and I, with Greg, wanted you to be aware that the next opportunity for public input in person will be in the Central Valley in November. You may recall from the language of SB 158, under which this board was formed, that we were to meet a certain number of times, at least 6 times a year, and at least half of those times outside of Sacramento. And we have taken that to heart and purposefully aimed to schedule in different locations: Los Angeles, Bay Area, Central Valley, and then we are going to continue to go further afield with the schedule we've set for ourselves in 2023. The next opportunity for your comment will be at an end-of-day workshop in Bakersfield on Monday, November 14th. And we are hopeful of seeing a number of community members and business interests in person at that time. The following day, Tuesday, November 15th, is our next scheduled full-day board meeting. The agenda will be posted shortly, and there will be both a recap by Liz, Greg, and I of what we've heard in this evening's workshop, and solicitation of public comment at that time. We want you to understand that October, November is really the focal point for public input to shape the work that we want to do in December and January. We know we have a couple of pending permit appeals that can't be heard until our process and regulations are in effect. And therein lies the challenge for us, is we want to devise a good process that complements the permit process that has had a lot of work and thought put into it. And we also know that there's a great deal of interest in it being a more accessible process, hence this evening's emphasis on public engagement. So please do give us benefit of your thoughts, even if not this evening. As we've noted earlier, please send them to us in any one of several of the usual ways, and we will make good use of them. But I'm just trying to emphasize that the optimal time to hear from you is in this October-November timeframe. So please do give us benefit of your thoughts and experience. We'd be most grateful. With that, let me check in. I don't want to keep anybody later than I need to. Are there any final comments that anyone would wish to make? If so, now's that moment. And Sheena, you could let me know if you see any hands. And if not, I'm going to turn it to Liz to make a closing comment and adjourn the meeting.
Definitely. If anyone would like to comment at this time, please raise your virtual hand. And for the Spanish line, if you can alert me if there's any Spanish comments at this time. I'm seeing no hands raised.
Liz and I thank you for your participation. We thank our Board of Environmental Safety staff and CSUS and CIT colleagues for their assistance. And we thank each of you for giving us your time this evening. Thank you so much for your participation. And we hope that our work will translate into a really efficient, effective, transparent process for everyone who's committed to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.